So, as you know, there are numerous judges, numerous courtrooms where the White House is vowing to push back as President Trump faces mounting legal challenges. These cases stretching out before several different courts across the country. So we thought today, to help us wade through all the legal aspects for this, we welcome back the former Attorney General, Bill Barr. And sir, good morning to you and welcome to our program today. Thanks for coming on.
Hi, Bill. Hi, Dana. Hi.
So in the last century now, you had 27 injunctions over 100 years. You've had 15 now in 2 months. What is the resolution when you have 650 some odd district judges who weigh in on national issues as they affect the executive branch? What would be your position from a very high level as to how this should be handled?
Yeah, I think there are two things going on, and the president is absolutely right to be frustrated and concerned about the way the courts are handling this. First, there's a pattern whereby these district court judges are trying to usurp the responsibility of the president in the national security area. The Constitution gives the president the power to make the judgments about how we deal with foreign nationals when we are animated by national security concerns. It's his call, not a district court judge's call. The second phenomenon that's occurring is even where it's appropriate for the court to play its traditional role of safeguarding the liberties of American citizens, we have this phenomenon of nationwide injunctions where the lowest level judge, district judges, try to bind the entire nation and bind the president in their initial decision. And that is not what we have meant by the judicial power under our Constitution. And it leads to a lot of instability in government and a lot of instability within the court system. It's something the court has to deal with. The Chief Justice has to deal with the problem of nationwide injunctions.
Speaking of the Supreme Court, Justice Elena Kagan back in 2022, she said this can't be right. Watch here.
It just can't be right that one district judge can stop a nationwide policy in its tracks and leave it stopped for the years that it takes to go through normal process.
From your read and understanding of the current makeup of the Supreme Court, if one of these cases does get up there and they are able to take on this issue, do you think it will come down in favor of the executive branch being able to execute what it wants to do?
Yes, if they finally stand up and decide a case instead of, hanging back from these decisions, I think it'll come out the right way. I think most of the justices appreciate how absurd this is. Look, when a district court judge decides a case, even the judge down the hall in the same building is not bound by that result. They can find differently in a similar case or a same kind of case. The only time it becomes binding on someone other than the parties, the precise parties, is when it's appealed to the circuit court, and then it becomes the rule in a certain number of states, and it doesn't become the national rule until it's adopted by the Supreme Court, and that all takes time. It's a preposterous situation that we have now.
Okay, well, I'm going to get into two cases in a moment here, but I'm going to ask you another 35,000-foot question here. Then we'll get to Venezuela, and we'll get to this student, former student at Columbia University. Right. Through all of this, it appears like Judge Boasberg's arguing that essentially due process was not given to those who were deported, let's say, or who are now in detention. What does the law say about those who are not American citizens when it comes to appealing their process or being given due process in their case?
Right. The fundamental problem here is that judges are like carpenters. Everything looks like a nail to them, and they, apply the same kind of rules they do in our criminal justice system when American citizens are involved, and trial-like hearings and adversarial hearings and all kinds of rules of evidence and trying to prove something beyond a reasonable doubt or some high standard of proof. That applies in our criminal justice system where the courts are playing their traditional role of protecting the rights of American citizens. That is not the rule, and it shouldn't be the regime when we're dealing with external threats and the president is trying to make judgment calls as the best way to protect the country. And what's happening here is they're trying to reduce all decisions to these trial-like hearings, which essentially gives the judge the power to overrule and second-guess the executive. Now, there are two decisions here. First decision, is this a predatory incursion by a foreign nation or government. And I think the president's right, and I think it is eminently defensible position that this is. You know, when I was Attorney General, we indicted the Maduro government in Venezuela because they were directly involved in drug trafficking to the United States, and we determined that they were doing it to hurt the United States. It was a hostile act to weaken our country. So I think the assessment of the current situation does support treating, handling these TDA members under the Alien Enemies Act.
Okay, so let's come back to that, okay? Take this Columbia University student or former student. He's got a green card. He's married to an American woman. Apparently she's 8 months pregnant. What rights or argument does he have to fight deportation?
Again, the key question there, he is entitled to some kind of hearing and process under the statutory law. But the key issue there is not something that the judges can second guess. He is being removed because the Secretary of State made a determination that his continued presence and activities in the United States pose a serious consequence for American foreign policy, adverse consequence. That's a determination that the Secretary of State makes. Due process only requires that decision be made by the Secretary of State, and it's a defensible position. It doesn't allow for judges to come in and have a trial as to whether they think it's serious consequences. And it's the same thing, by the way, with these Venezuelans. They had process. They had a process in the executive branch where there was a review of their situation, investigation, and their determination made that they were members of TDA. Now, if one of them has evidence that they're not, the proper approach is to go for a writ of habeas corpus and put forward your evidence and have a response to that by the court, some specific showing. But to say that, as this judge has said, is that if the act requires individualized trial-like hearings for every single one, then it just makes a mockery of the statute. The reason the statute is there is to provide, as the Supreme Court has said, a summary way of quickly removing a large number of people.
Yesterday, Judge Millett, she's an Obama appointee. She was part of this 3-judge panel. This is what she said about these Venezuelan gang members. Watch.
There were plane loads of people. There were no procedures in place to notify people. Nazis got better treatment under the Alien Enemy Act than has happened here.
Is that going a little too far?
Well, yeah, I think it definitely goes too far. I'm not sure what she's speaking about. You know, Nazis captured by the United States did not get into the courtroom. I can tell you that. Even ones who were born in the United States and went to Germany to fight for Germany. So again, they're trying to have a trial as to whether or not they're a member is wrong. They have an opportunity to raise that. They were interviewed. Determinations were made. If they have evidence, you know, they can come forward with it under habeas corpus. But think about it. How could you ever prove this? It would take, beyond a reasonable doubt for any of these people. We're trying to show that they're members of a gang, a Venezuelan gang. It's ultimately a judgment call that has to take into account the need for speed, the risk to the American people. These people are not American citizens. They don't have the same due process rights in this situation as Americans have in law enforcement.
One more just to follow up on that. In the hearing yesterday at the appellate level, one of the judges, Judge Walker, Justin Walker, said, can you name me a case where this has survived on appeal? And I don't know, maybe you can off the top of your head. I'm not a lawyer, and I can't find one when I was looking. But this Alien Enemies Act, it appears, based on law, even though it's been barely used in the history of the country, that it is the most efficient way for deportation. And one must think that the Trump administration had a plan here, especially for the 250 some odd who went to El Salvador, that this is what they were going to do and they were going to move with efficiency. Now, a court stepped in and tried to stop that. I don't know what the timeline was specifically, but the judge is asking for that information. Would that change your mind if there was something in there that suggested, well, that was illegal?
Well, I mean, if there was something that showed it was illegal, but it's hard for me to see. It may show that they were, moving very quickly and wanted to avoid judicial review, but that doesn't affect the question of whether or not it was legal or not.
Okay, maybe the better question is, was it done by the book? Maybe that's a better way to phrase it.
Well, I think they were trying to do it by the book. You remember the judge first ordered that none of the individual defendants be moved. And that's really what he has jurisdiction over, if he has jurisdiction. I question whether he actually has jurisdiction under the APA, which he says. Okay. But then a verbal order at the last minute saying, I don't want those planes leaving. My understanding is these are not Justice Department planes. These are military or other agency planes. So it may have taken time to figure out what was going on.
Got it. Really appreciate your time. We hope you come back.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.